My wife's affair destroyed me, but my revenge was silent and unstoppable. I never thought my life would change with just one glance at a screen. But when I picked up my wife's tablet that evening, everything I believed in shattered. The message at the top of her inbox wasn't just a betrayal, it was a confirmation of something I'd been too blind to see. Last night was amazing. I can still taste you. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. A strange calmness settled over me as I clicked the message, letting the full horror unfold. Explicit, intimate details. Plans for the weekend. Mentions of how much she'd missed him. Not just some fling. This had been going on for months. For 15 years, I had been a devoted husband. I built a home, a business, a life with the woman I thought I knew. And yet, while I was fighting to keep us afloat, she had been sneaking away, living a double life. Every late night at the office, every sudden girls' night, every time she rolled away from me in bed with an excuse about being tired, it had all been a lie. I could have screamed. I could have confronted her right then. But something inside me stopped. Confrontation wouldn't fix this. There was no fixing this. Instead, I did the one thing she never expected. I stayed silent. I took screenshots. Every message, every secret meeting, every promise she made to him. Then I emailed them to myself and carefully set the tablet back down. The moment she walked through the door, I forced a smile, pretending nothing had changed. She greeted me like any other night, dropping her purse on the counter, yawning like she had just come from a long day at work. But I knew better. I could see it now, the slight messiness of her hair, the faintest trace of a different cologne on her clothes. The same woman who had promised to love me forever had spent her evening with another man, and now she stood in our home, acting as if nothing had happened. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it. How many nights had I been oblivious? How many times had I kissed her, held her, told her I loved her while she was giving herself to someone else? She kissed my cheek, muttered something about needing a shower, and disappeared down the hall. As I listened to the water running, I sat in the living room, staring at the glass of whiskey in my hand. This was the moment where most men would lose it. Shout. Break things. Demand answers. But I wasn't going to do any of that. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of knowing she'd broken me. I had a plan. And by the time I was done, she'd wish she had never made me the fool. The morning after my discovery, I woke up before my wife and went about my routine as if nothing had changed. She stirred beside me, stretching lazily before murmuring about needing more sleep. I watched her for a moment, taking in the face I had once adored, the face that now belonged to a stranger. It was almost surreal how quickly my feelings had shifted. Just hours ago, I had thought we were partners, a team fighting through life's struggles together. Now, I knew better. And knowing changed everything. As I made coffee, I felt the weight of what I had learned pressing down on me. Every movement, every sound in our house felt different. This was no longer a home. It was just a place where two people existed under the same roof, one blissfully unaware that the other had seen behind the curtain. I checked my phone, the screenshots I had sent myself still sitting there like a ticking bomb. I had the truth in my hands. But I wasn't going to act on it just yet. She finally emerged from the bedroom, yawning, her hair damp from her morning shower. She wrapped her arms around me from behind, pressing her body against mine like nothing had changed. Morning, she murmured. You're up early. I forced a chuckle. Work's busy, I lied. Figured I'd get a head start. She nodded, already distracted, reaching for her own phone on the counter. I watched her fingers move across the screen, typing a message. To him? Probably. And that was fine. Let her dig herself deeper. Let her believe she was getting away with it. I left the house with a strange sense of detachment, like I was stepping out of someone else's life rather than my own. At work, I went through the motions, barely hearing my employees as they gave updates on our latest project. My foreman noticed something was off, but he didn't push. I appreciated that. I wasn't ready to talk. Not yet. Instead, I spent my lunch break planning. I started researching divorce lawyers, looking into financial implications, making notes on what assets we shared and what was solely mine. Every click, every search felt like taking back control. I wasn't just some heartbroken husband. I was preparing for battle. By the time I got home that evening, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her with rage. I wasn't going to scream or beg for an explanation. She didn't deserve that kind of reaction. She had made her choices over and over again with full knowledge of what she was doing. There was no mistake here. Just betrayal. Cold and calculated. She was already home, sitting on the couch with her legs curled beneath her, scrolling through her phone. The same phone that had been lighting up during our anniversary dinner. The same phone she clung to more than she clung to me. Hey, she greeted, barely looking up. Hey, I responded, dropping my keys onto the table. I walked past her without another word, heading to the bedroom. I could feel her eyes on my back, but she didn't press for conversation. She probably assumed I was just tired. Work stress, financial strain, those had been my excuses for weeks, and she had accepted them without question. Good. Let her believe I was still the clueless husband, too weighed down by life to see what was right in front of me. Over the next few days, I played my role perfectly. I acted normal, affectionate even. I asked about her day, listened as she complained about work, laughed at the appropriate moments. But beneath it all, I was watching. Every late-night text, every sudden plan that took her out of the house, every excuse she gave, it all added up, further confirming what I already knew. One evening, she mentioned a work event. "It's just a little gathering," she said casually, not meeting my eyes. "Some of the team is going out after a big pitch. I might be late." I nodded. "Sounds fun. Want me to wait up?" Her hesitation was brief but telling. "No need. I'll probably just crash at Jenna's if it gets too late." Jenna. Her go-to excuse. Funny thing was, Jenna had mentioned in passing weeks ago that she was heading out of town for a wedding. My wife had no idea I knew that. She was getting sloppy. I smiled. "All right, have fun." And just like that, she thought she had my blessing. That night, as soon as she left, I followed. I kept a distance, careful not to be seen. She didn't go to a restaurant, didn't meet with colleagues. She drove straight to a hotel on the other side of town. I parked across the street, my hands gripping the wheel as I watched her walk inside, dressed a little too nicely for a simple work gathering. She checked her phone as she waited in the lobby, then smiled when a man approached her. I didn't need to see more. I had all the proof I needed. I could have walked in right then and there. Could have made a scene, exposed her, humiliated her in front of the man she had chosen over me. But that would have been too easy for her. Too dramatic. She would have twisted it, played the victim, begged for forgiveness. I wasn't interested in any of that. Instead, I took a photo. A single, clear shot of them together. And then I drove home. When she finally returned in the early hours of the morning, she moved carefully through the house, trying not to wake me. I kept my breathing steady, pretending to be asleep as she slipped into bed beside me. I could feel her warmth, hear the soft sigh she let out as she settled in. It was disgusting. She had just come from his arms. From his bed. And now she lay beside me as if nothing had happened. I turned away from her, staring into the darkness. Soon, she would know. Soon, she would realize that the man she had deceived wasn't as blind as she thought. And when that moment came, she wouldn't see it coming. The following morning, I went about my routine as if nothing had changed. She kissed me on the cheek before heading to work, murmuring something about an upcoming deadline. I watched her walk out the door, my mind already 5 steps ahead. I wasn't going to confront her yet. Not before I had everything in place. She thought she was still in control, that I was just the oblivious husband who trusted her without question. That illusion was about to shatter. I spent the next few days preparing. First, I made a visit to a divorce lawyer. I walked into his office with a folder of evidence, screenshots of the messages, timestamps of her hotel visits, and a recent bank statement showing suspicious charges I hadn't noticed before. Fancy dinners, expensive gifts, even a hotel booking in her name. She wasn't just sneaking around, she was spending our money on him. The lawyer, a no-nonsense man in his 50s, flipped through my documents and let out a slow breath. "You've already done half my job for me," he said, setting the folder down. "Oregon is a no-fault divorce state, so the infidelity itself won't give you leverage in court. But the financial misconduct? That's another story. If we can prove she used marital assets to fund her affair, she could be forced to reimburse you in the settlement." I nodded, my jaw tight. "I want this done as quickly and cleanly as possible. I don't want a drawn-out battle." He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "She doesn't know you're onto her, does she?" "No." "Good. That gives you the upper hand. The moment she realizes, she'll try to manipulate you. Stay quiet. Play along. Let her think everything is normal while we file the paperwork." I shook his hand and walked out of that office feeling more in control than I had in weeks. This wasn't just about getting revenge. It was about reclaiming my life. Over the next few days, I continued playing my part. I came home on time, kissed her goodnight, even asked about her day like I actually cared. But in the background, I was making moves. I transferred my personal savings into an account she didn't have access to. I secured my business assets, making sure she couldn't claim anything in the divorce. I quietly removed her as a beneficiary on my life insurance. She had no idea that while she was busy sneaking around with him, I was locking down everything she thought she was entitled to. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when I set up a meeting with her boss. I wasn't sure if he knew about the affair, but I suspected he'd be interested in what I had to say. When I arrived at his office, he looked surprised to see me. "What can I do for you?" he asked, gesturing for me to sit. I placed a manila envelope on his desk. "I thought you should know that one of your employees has been engaging in behavior that might reflect poorly on your company." His expression darkened as he opened the envelope. Inside were printouts of the messages, photos of her with the man she had been seeing, one of his executives, a married one at that. He flipped through them in silence before setting them down with a sigh. "I appreciate you bringing this to my attention," he said, his tone measured. "We take ethics very seriously here." I nodded. "I figured as much. I'm not here to cause problems. Just thought you should know what's happening under your roof." He leaned forward. "I assume she doesn't know you're here?" "No." "Good. Let's keep it that way." I walked out of that building knowing I had just set the first domino in motion. If her company had any integrity, they would at the very least investigate. If things went the way I suspected, she would soon find herself in hot water. That night, she came home smiling, humming to herself as she poured a glass of wine. She had no idea that her world was about to come crashing down. "Good day at work?" I asked, keeping my voice even. She nodded, taking a sip. "Yeah. Things are finally falling into place." I almost laughed at the irony. The next morning, I received a text from my lawyer, documents filed. "She'll be served soon." The waiting game was over. The plan was set. Now all I had to do was sit back and watch it unfold. 2 days later, everything started falling apart for her, just as I had planned. It was a Friday morning when she received the envelope at work, the divorce papers. She had no idea it was coming. No warnings, no fights, no accusations beforehand. Just cold, legal paperwork landing in her hands while she was surrounded by her coworkers. I knew because she called me, her voice shaking with panic. "What is this?" she demanded the moment I answered. "You know exactly what it is," I said calmly. A pause. Then a sharp intake of breath. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm very serious," I replied, grabbing my coffee and leaning back in my chair. "I've been serious since the night you left for your work event and ended up in a hotel with your boyfriend." Silence. It stretched long enough for me to picture her face, the shock, the fear, the moment of realization that she was caught. "Who told you that?" she finally whispered, as if it mattered. "Does it really make a difference?" I countered. "You did it. That's the only thing that matters." She tried to stammer something, but I hung up before she could spin a lie. I didn't need to hear it. She had lied enough. That afternoon, things got worse for her. Just as I had suspected, her company didn't take kindly to the news that one of their executives had been sleeping with a subordinate, especially not when that subordinate was married. I had no idea how the confrontation played out, but I got the confirmation I needed when she came home hours earlier than usual, looking pale and shaken. I sat on the couch, pretending to be engrossed in a sports game while she paced in front of me. "You went to my job," she accused, her voice tight with anger. I didn't even glance at her. "Nope. I went to your boss." "Big difference." Her hands balled into fists. "How could you do this to me?" I finally turned my head, raising an eyebrow. "How could you do this to us?" She had no response. By the end of that weekend, she was drowning. The man she had thrown everything away for wasn't answering her calls. I wasn't sure if he had been fired or if his wife had caught wind of what was happening, but he had vanished. Just like that. He had been her escape plan, her backup option, and now he was gone. And for the first time in years, she was completely alone. That Sunday night, she tried one last time to manipulate me. She cooked my favorite meal, set the table with candles, and even wore the same dress she had worn on one of our first dates. When I walked through the door, she gave me a small, almost shy smile. "Can we talk?" she asked softly. I glanced at the table, at the effort she had put into this pathetic attempt at fixing things, and shook my head. "We don't have anything left to talk about." Her face crumbled. "I made a mistake," she whispered. "I lost myself for a while, but I never stopped loving you." I let out a humorless laugh. "You lost yourself for months? Convenient." She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Please," she begged. "We can work through this. We've built a life together. I don't want to throw it all away." I looked her in the eyes, searching for something, remorse, honesty, anything real. But all I saw was desperation. Not love, not guilt, just the fear of being alone. "You already threw it away," I said, my voice calm. "I'm just making it official." That night, I slept in my own bed for the first time in weeks. She cried herself to sleep on the couch. I felt nothing. By the end of the month, she had moved out. She didn't want to, of course, but the house had to be sold as part of the divorce, and without her cushy job, she couldn't afford to fight me for it. I had no idea where she went, and I didn't care enough to ask. For the first time in years, my life was mine again. No lies, no betrayal, no pretending. Just me standing on my own. And damn, it felt good. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload.